there to welcome and open this particular session of Stay Lit.
Thank you, Moronga, for that. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, young people of Mzansi. Welcome to our 8th edition of the Stay Lit session. So this month we have a particular focus and we want to talk about everything that has to do with trade and investments and how does that translate to young people? How can they take part in these opportunities? Singapore and South Africa enjoys long-standing relations, and this year particularly celebrates 30 years of this diplomatic relations. This milestone has led to the High Commissioner in Singapore to have a series of engagements as well as events in collaborating this with the Singaporean government. So we want to be discussing the South African Focus Week in Singapore and have more information about that. But without further waste of time, I'd like to welcome our esteemed speakers for today. We have Her Excellency Charlotte Lobe, who is the High Commissioner of South Africa in Singapore. We have Mr. Dennis Akule, who is the Chief Director for My Arts International. And we also have Ms. Kiradine Hitley, who is the Executive Director for the South African Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. So young people, please ask any questions regarding the trade and investment opportunities in Singapore and how can you get involved. At the end of the presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. So I hope that you will interact. Thank you so much, Moronga. Back to you.
Thank you so much, OM. And over to the wonderful, highly esteemed Charlotte Lobe, who is the High Commissioner of South Africa to Singapore and the former acting Chief Operations Officer of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in South Africa. She will be joining us here today all the way from Singapore to share some lovely nuggets about the overview of trade and investment over the past 30 years, between South Africa and Singapore. She'll also be showing us, some of the accessibility for young people to trade and invest in Singapore. So you have a product that has been on the shelves in South Africa that you've been trading, and you've always wondered how can you act global while thinking local? How can you think global while you're acting local? This is a wonderful opportunity for you. Ms. Charlotte Lobe, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Muruma. I hope I've had good instructions on how to portray the presentation here today because I'm on this platform for the first time. And I'm going to try and do that. Let me first start by thanking the NYDA for creating this opportunity for the High Commission to come and present at this very important session. And I'm told that this is part of the series of engagements that the Office of the Executive Chair has been doing over time. And going straight to what I wanted to present, I'm struggling now. I don't know where to press so that I show this presentation, but that should not be a problem at all. We can proceed. We thought that because South Africa is celebrating 30 years of diplomatic relations with Singapore, there was a need for us to create a legacy program. And a legacy program to us meant something that would be organic and something that people can easily relate to in Singapore as well as in South Africa. And because of this reason, we came up with what Margaret has spoken about, this series of events for the for the Focus Week. And we thought that we needed to engage stakeholders like the NYDA in making this program a success. 2023 marks the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between South Africa and Singapore. And this started in 1992 when the former Singapore Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Lee Kwan Yew visited South Africa and spent about 14 days interacting with various players who at the time were negotiating a settlement for the future South Africa. And following this particular visit, then in 1992, we established our offices, but at a consular level in Singapore, where we could issue passports, we could look at consular matters for South Africans in Singapore or the people of Singapore who wished to visit South Africa. In 1993, the two governments formalized diplomatic relations and appointed people at the high level, at the level of high commissioners. And as you are aware, in countries where we are members of the Commonwealth, we refer to each other as high commissioners, and where we are non-Commonwealth countries, then you have ambassadors. On the 6th of March 1997, Nelson Mandela visited Singapore. This was followed by the visit of President Mbeki in April 2005 and the working visit of President Cyril Ramaphosa in his capacity as Deputy President in October 2016. Now, in recognition of all of these efforts, we have then developed this program that I will speak to shortly. But what is the rationale of us celebrating 30 years of diplomatic relations? The reasons we're doing this is because our relationship with Singapore does not just exist. There are factors that mitigate for us to continue to strengthen relations with Singapore. Part of those factors is that South Africa and Singapore are both gateway countries into their regions. As an example, Singapore is revered as a gateway country into Southeast Asia and Asia as a whole, and serves as the regional headquarters of companies that are doing work in Asia. And we have seen the figures lately that there are more than 4,000 global conglomerates that are based in Asia that has their headquarters in Singapore. It is a first choice for many companies and startups who want to invest in this part of the world to come and be established in Singapore. Singapore is both maritime and aviation hub in Southeast Asia. It is the gateway into Asia, as I've said. And we have also seen something very interesting from our statistics that major South African companies that are doing business in Asia are headquartered in Singapore. And the reason for this is because Singapore provides a platform for companies to do business ease of doing business. Based on the latest statistics from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we have noticed that Singapore is ranked as the 31st as South Africa's biggest export destination in the rest of the world, and it is also the 44th as the biggest supplier of imports that are sourced from South Africa to the world. In terms of our investment promotion opportunities, as you are aware, South Africa is the most industrialized economy in the continent of Africa with a sophisticated banking sector. And because of this reason, we have seen some of the bankers in Singapore training their people in South Africa for a simple reason that South Africa has one of the most revered reserve banks. We have one of the oldest reserve banks, and most people want to understand our financial system and the fact that currently South Africa is also the financial hub of the continent and the fintech hub for the rest of the continent. And as I have already said, we have seen interesting things into investments into our economy based on these factors that I have just alluded to. As the second largest producer of gold, as well as the world's top producer of chrome, manganese, platinum, vanadium, and many other natural resources, we have seen that when you look at the list of the things that Singapore buy from South Africa, top 3 of those are actually from our natural resources. 35% of what Singapore buy in South Africa is our gold, as example, and about 13% is on manganese ore, followed by others. But we've also noticed that as part of the overall 10% of what Singapore buy in South Africa, it includes our alcohol, particularly our wines, it includes our fruit and veggies, but interestingly, it also includes Singapore buying cars from South Africa and also automobile parts. The other interesting thing that we thought we would mention today is that these do not only provide plenty of export opportunities, but also investment in areas of mining and beneficiation of South Africa's mineral resources, also in the areas of our energy supply, because in order for us to even be involved in beneficiation of our mineral resources, we need to pay attention to our energy supply and consistent energy supply. There are also investment opportunities identified in the areas of coal, solid fuels, oil, and gas. And I am mentioning coal because, as you are aware, South Africa is choosing a route of a mixed energy as a result of the history of our energy supply, and in the work that we do, we continue to promote also this a part of our natural resources. But interestingly, we have noticed that South Africa is recognized as a world leader in coal-based synthesis and gas to liquids technologies, and there's a lot of interest from countries like Singapore to learn about this kind of technologies and see how best it can be taken to the next level. In terms of our bilateral flows, I have already mentioned the facts about where Singapore is ranked in South Africa. But just to say that Singapore is a significant investor in South Africa with investments. If we look at our investments and as well as trade, they are totaling over 20 billion in sectors such as manufacturing, financial services, real estate, our natural resources, etc. South Africa has also encouraged Singaporean companies to invest in country's renewable energy sector, as I've already said, because when I came to Singapore, and I like repeating this fact, I learned that in Mandarin, if you are to write the word crisis, you are going to use only 2 strokes, one representing opportunity, another one representing danger. So for us in the High Commission, we have taken a posture that even though our energy supply is seen currently as in crisis, but we believe we can turn it around and not stay in a dangerous situation, but use it as an opportunity to further ensure investments into that sector that would then assist us in broadening investments into the various sectors, because we are conscious of the reality that without a stable electricity supply, our economy cannot grow at the level that we want it to grow, because energy supply also impacts on productivity. South Africa's economic relations towards Singapore are focused on trade, investment, tourism promotion, as well as skills transfer. In view of Singapore's advanced degree of integration in the international economy and its dependence on foreign trade and investment, South Africa is regarded as an important market for Singaporean goods and services. Singapore is also considered an important gateway for the export goods and services into Southeast Asia from South Africa, and a major hub for joint venture partnerships throughout Asia. And just to showcase a point that I was speaking about, these are really, we have noticed that from 2018, we have improved in our export and imports, and by 2022, our exports were at 10 billion, whilst imports from Singapore were at 18 billion. What are the things that South Africa is buying from Singapore that is giving us this figure that I have now spoken about? We have noticed that in most cases, we are buying petroleum-related goods from Singapore, and hence it accounts for the 18 billion, whilst I have already spoken about the 10 billion that they buy from South Africa. Chairperson, the opportunities for young people in Singapore are in the following sectors. We believe young people who are in mining, they do have an opportunity to trade with Singapore around our precious stones and metals. Those who are in agriculture, they can trade with Singapore on our the side of our fruit, particularly our citrus fruit, and other agro-processing products. We have an opportunity in automotive industry, auto parts, health products, and as well as hide products. And all of this gives you a sense of how Singapore looks like. You would understand that they will buy hide products from South Africa because they don't have animals where they can have animal skin for them to have leather products. Because Singapore does not have land, they will not be able to have enough food to feed its population. Currently, Singapore's policy on food security says that they would want to at least be in a position to produce 30% of food by 2030. They call it 30-30 food security, but currently they are only able to provide about 10%. And this is something that I think for young people, it's a take home to look at how best you may want to look at the kind of companies that you have that we can trade with Singapore. Program director, in terms of the work that we do, we try to attract foreign direct investments in South Africa, and by doing this, we are looking at both types of FDIs. One, the vertical FDIs, as well as the horizontal FDIs. And the reason for this is that we are not only focusing on FDIs that would want to come to South Africa and do what they are doing in Singapore. We are also looking at a possibility of them to spread their wings into other sectors where they can invest in capital, even though they may not have expertise in those specific sectors. In order to attract investment into South Africa, the mission is working with the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce. We are working with the Enterprise Singapore. We work with the South African Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. And of course, you'll have a presentation from the South African Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. We also work with the Singapore Business Federation and other government ministries, agencies, and companies that exist in Singapore. Whereas previously the emphasis was often placed on us as diplomats, focusing more on protecting our countries. This time around, it's not only about protection, it's also about promotion. So this work that we are doing for as part of the 30th anniversary, we are promoting South Africa in Singapore. In short, if I may put it just in one line, our work as a South African mission, particularly in Singapore, is to sell South Africa to Singapore. Make sure that Singaporeans develop interest in our products, interest in our services. And as a result, we are part of many other initiatives. And as part of this 30th anniversary, we will be participating next week at the Africa-Singapore Business Forum, where we have business people coming from all over Africa, coming to Singapore to showcase their products. We are also part of initiatives like Made in Africa Conference that also showcase the African products in Singapore, because one of the things that we are trying to do is to make sure that our focus is not only about our country, it is also about the Africa Agenda 2063 and making sure that our footprint into the world also recognizes the role that South Africa has to play as part of Africa Agenda 2063. Chairperson, we have noted that following COVID, our tourism industry is improving. We have noticed that every day, if you look at the Singapore daily flights to South Africa, they are full. Coming to South Africa or coming to Singapore, every day they are full. In fact, earlier on today in our meeting with other partners, I was saying to them that if you want to book a flight on the Singapore Airlines, you may want to book it 3 months before if you want a direct flight, as a result of the interest that we are now seeing in Singaporeans on South Africa as a tourism attraction destination of choice. South Africa ranks high on the Africa's most or top travel destination list in Singapore. We are also part of initiatives with other stakeholders like Dynasty Travel, where we promote different destinations into South Africa. But very interesting for us is that Singaporeans do not only visit South Africa for vacation, they visit South Africa for business, to establish business networks. They visit South Africa to learn about our rich cultural heritage. They visit South Africa to be part of our science diplomacy. They visit South Africa to also do some research in various sectors. And this is something that, as we continue to build on our tourism promotion initiatives, we will need to also make sure that there is understanding in our South Africans in the fact that when people come to South Africa, they are also interested in what we eat, what we dress. They're interested in the music that we listen to. They're interested in the books that we write. They're interested in our artifacts, etc. So giving them this package about South Africa, the whole package and the whole experience, we thought that we needed to do something a little bit more, and we call it the South Africa Focus Week in Singapore. And thanks to MyUs International for this wonderful collaboration with the South African High Commission. We are hosting the week during our Heritage Month, which is very special to us. The first day of the Focus Week will be a day after our Heritage Day. It will be on the 25th. MyUs International is a full-service event production and entertainment management company. And of course, they'll speak to this later on. But with them on our side, we are giving Singaporeans a full package of a South African experience. The activities will include business exhibitions, business-to-business meetings, government-to-government, business-to-government meetings. We are also looking at a film screening, but all of these issues I will leave to Mr. Dennis to speak to. The ones that I think I am more would like to say a little bit on relates really to the two activities that we want to host as part of our people-to-people mechanisms. Because one of the things that we are promoting as South Africa abroad is to make sure that we promote relations between our people and the people of the countries that we are accredited to outside of formally established protocols. And for this reason, we are hosting a South Africa-Singapore Women's Roundtable on the 26th of September. And on this day, we will be bringing business women from Singapore and business women from South Africa to look at possibilities of collaboration, to look at available opportunities for them to expand. Hence, what we are doing for this roundtable, we are focusing our attention on women's economic and financial inclusion. That will be the main focus of this event. This will be our second roundtable. We had the first one in 2022, and Ms. Murunga from the NYDA was one of the participants in that session. We will also host a youth dialogue, and this youth dialogue will be more of an information session on how we can collaborate as South Africa and Singapore on issues of youth development, but not just for the sake of it. We want to be more detailed and focus on issues of investment, trade, and skills transfer. So the session of young people will really look at this matter, taking into account the already existing MOU that was signed between the Deputy Executive Chair and the Leadership and Academy, Character and Leadership Academy of Singapore. And we will look at practical ways of providing support to young people who are interested in investing in this market. And we can assure you that investing in Singapore is something quite interesting. It's not only about Singapore, because once your product is accepted in Singapore, you can trade with any other country in Southeast Asia within the context of their ASEAN agreements. But we've also noticed that outside of ASEAN, you can also trade with other countries in Asia because of the kind of relation that Singapore has with the rest of Asia. The other interesting point is that having established yourself in Singapore, it means that in the eyes of Asians, your product has gone through a vigorous process of evaluation until it is accepted. And as a result, that becomes easier for our companies who are based here to work in other parts of Asia. But our programs will not only end with the Focus Week. We are also relaunching the South African Garden at Gardens by the Bay, but this program is for November 2023. And we are one of the 5 gardens at the Gardens by the Bay. I know South Africans always visit Gardens by the Bay, but they've never been to the South African Garden. They always pass by it, but they don't realize the board that says South African Garden. As you know, Singapore is recognized globally as a city in the garden due to its innovations that brings greenery and biodiversity into the urban landscape, from roadside greenery to skyline greenery. Even though you will not be here in November, we are going to give you this experience when you are here in Singapore. Now, in 2022, Gardens by the Bay celebrated its 10th anniversary, an iconic tourist attraction located in the heart of Marina Bay. Those of you who know Marina Bay, it is the home of the Flower Dome and Cloud Forest, and it has 2 magnificent cult conservatory, the super tree groves, which are covered in vegetation and plants. And the super tree groves bring technology and nature together, because these are also used as part of Singapore's sustainability. And for young people who will be here in September, we would want you to also, we would want to take you to this kind of an attraction, because it will also show you how Singapore is using renewables in this little place to provide electricity for the entire gardens at Bay. So we want to introduce you to this and for us to look at how best we can look at some of these innovations and look at how best we can implement them back home. So for us at the South African High Commission, your experience in Singapore, even though it will be for that week of September, but we want to introduce you to Singapore as a whole and what it provides, the lessons that we can learn from Singapore. Would want to link your to do business matching between your companies and companies here. Would want to link government departments that are participating in this program with their counterparts here. So as the NYDA say, hurrying Singapore, and that brings me to the end of my presentation, Chairperson, and thank you very much for this